I'm Murray Tyson from Birmingham, Alabama. I went through a divorce, my second divorce, in 2008. I filed for it in 2005. It took 3 years. I went through 3 judges. I went through 4 lawyers. I figured this was going to be a simple thing. My wife and I did not live together. We were married totally by the time the divorce came about for 15 years. But we didn't live together for 7. We lived apart. And then she told me she was going to move back to Haleyville, Alabama. And so I filed for divorce, because I knew if she got up to Haleyville, Alabama and filed for divorce, I was really cooked. But like I said, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. Birmingham, Alabama has got the biggest bankruptcy county in the whole history of the state of the United States. Our county is full of corrupt people. A bunch of them have already gone to jail, but believe me, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I come from a solid middle-class family. I happen to be down here in Montgomery burying Judge John C. Tyson, which is a first cousin, some 2 removed, which was on the Supreme Court. He was also on the criminal appeals court for 20 plus years. My dad was a lawyer. My brother-in-law did 22, 23 years in the Army as a JAG colonel, and then went on and did another 15 years for the state of Tennessee. My dad's first cousin was a guy named Tom Martin, was a lawyer. In 1910, he formed the Alabama Power Company, and with 3 people. He was the junior lawyer. 8 years later, Lay dies. He moves up into the president's slot, and for the next 45 years, he's either president or chairman of the board. At the same time he was doing that in 1910 was forefather John R. Tyson was the Chief Justice of the state. So I've had a lot of lawyers in my family and relatives and whatnot, and I never thought I'd get a bad shake from a judicial system. Anyway, I filed for divorce thinking this is, it's just a simple matter. We hadn't lived together in 8 years. She tells me she's moving out of town, so I'm going to file for it because I do not want her to get up in Haleyville where they have power up there. Her daddy owns about 3,200 acres, and they're financially well-doing, and if they're not related to all the head honchos up there, they're big buddies of theirs. So anyway, as I'm going through this court proceeding, it just drags out, it drags out, it drags out. I happen to know a guy named Drayton Neighbors. Well, he's the Chief Justice of the Alabama Supreme Court, so I write a letter complaining about the system. Of course, it gets intercepted. He never sees it, and it comes back to haunt me. He put it in my file, and I'm ex parte or communicating, trying to communicate with the judge, and it's another strike against me. Anyway, when we're going through the proceedings, for some reason, my wife wants to have psychological evaluation. I have no problem with it. I agreed with it. And I'm now with my second attorney, Lee Hodges. He agrees for the psychological evaluation. I have no problem with it. So as it comes down the wire for a while, it's not taking place. And Lee Hodges recuses himself or gets out of the case due to the fact he doesn't want to go to trial with it. He just wants to settle this thing. Fine. I hire another attorney. Another attorney just keeps milking me, just trying to schedule my case. So I see the writing on the wall with him. I got rid of him and I hired a guy that I went to high school with. I learned my lesson if you're going to be up against a high-dollar attorney, you best get you a high-dollar attorney. Anyway, this guy points out that going to a somebody to give you psychological evaluation can't be somebody that's already been working with your children. It's illegal. So we kick that out. Then we bring it back up. That's when we're going to go for the psychological evaluation. By then, we've changed to another judge that gets in trouble locally because his system's corrupt, as we've said before. And they kick all the high-dollar cases out of her courtroom, and they put it in Judge Sonny Ferguson's courtroom. And my lawyer says, oh, Judge Ferguson's fair and all this stuff, and you'll have no problem and whatnot. Little do I know. But anyway, we bring up this thing about psychological evaluation to my wife's attorney, and in doing so, he fires this letter back and says, well, since y'all brought this up, we feel like your client, me, should pay for this thing. And they're telling me to go to Karen Turnbull to do the psychological evaluation. So I call her up. And the psychological evaluation is going to be $6,000. I'm going, listen, my wife said she was going to pay for this. Evidently, she thought it was insurance or something. Well, you know, insurance is not going to pay for this. So they pile it on my back to pay for this thing. Knowing the first psychological evaluation had corruption involved in it because it shouldn't have taken place the way they set it up. And I had two attorneys. Not that I have anything against gay people or whatnot, but I had two attorneys tell me this woman that I'm going to psychological evaluation is a chain-smoking lesbian. Plus the fact I'm paying $6,000, I'm not going to do it. I'm staying away. I smell a rat in a woodpile. You got to realize once you get educated in this legal process that lawyers have certain people they want to guide you to that's going to be favorable for their case. Another point I want to bring out is in the legal system, this what they call a justice system. Everybody you talk to, it's not about justice. It's about winning the case. And if you interpret what that means, it's about the money. Anyway, we're in court. We're in court in Ferguson's court, and I tell him, I haven't. This is 3 years. I remind you. I tell him, I haven't seen my kids in a year. And he says, why not? I says, because my wife has got restraining orders against me. I'd like to back up a second and tell you an incident, because my wife, this is what they do. And I had somebody tip me off. You know, women are good at this divorce scenario. I'm out making a living. I'm trying to feed my family and take care of my family. Okay. What they do is they get a little recorder and they give your kids. They give this little recorder to the kids and they tape and they tape. And I'm driving up to Haleyville, 80 miles an hour. That brings up another point. Another thing they get away with, and I brought this up. There's a law that says when they move, they can't move more than 60 miles. Well, she's 85, 90 miles. Gasoline at this time is $4 a gallon. And I'm having to do all this driving. You'd think she'd meet me halfway. No, no, no. But anyway, they got this recorder going on me. And I was telling a friend of mine about it, and they said, you better check for a recorder. And sure enough, I find one. And I'm playing this thing back, and then I find out he's got a cell phone. And I catch the cell phone, and I get this message on it. It says, y'all call me when anything happens. I'm down here, and I can be there in 15 minutes. And I've already talked to the police because they're trying to get me on tape doing something out of ordinary. Anyway, that's when I caught the first tape. This is what they do too. They get you, and they want to tape you in a car, because in a car you're trying to drive. You got your mind on stuff. You got lives in your hand, and you're going down roads 60, 70 miles, 2 lanes, 60 miles an hour, head-on traffic. And you're trying to carry a conversation on with your children and whatnot because you're interested in them. You want to know stuff. And they're just kind of, one of them, Leah, keeps her mouth shut. She was told, I could hear on one of the tapes, Leah, I got the tape rolling, don't say nothing. So she clams up and doesn't say anything. But Elizabeth, the older one, which I feel for because she's at that age that she wants to stay around her friends. She don't want to be driving back and forth to Birmingham to Haleyville and spending the weekend with her dad. She wants to be with her friends and whatnot. So she goes right along with this that her mother put her up to, and just aggravating me to pieces. Well, anyway, I confiscate that tape and whatnot. But later on, we get in a situation, and believe me, I'm driving my older vehicle because it gets 34 miles a gallon, it's 5-speed, $4 a gallon, and it's older. And I keep hearing this metallic something or other. What is that? What is that? Y'all hear that? And no, we don't. They deny it. So eventually, I'm freaking out because I think the car's falling apart. And then I realize what's going on. Because Elizabeth says, oh, that was Leah. She was so-and-so. Well, Leah is the sweetest girl you'll ever meet in the love of my life. She wouldn't do that. But anyway, I went into a 2-minute tirade and told my daughter that I ought to smack you. I've never hit my kids. I gave them both, and I should have said it the way I did in court. I told the judge I gave them a whipping. It's one of those kind of whippings that I got when I was in elementary school from my principal. It was all I could do to keep from laughing compared to the whippings I got at home. Anyway, I didn't check for a recorder, and it comes back to haunt me. So anyway, they have this recording. I didn't know what was going on, but it was my time to come up there and see her in the early summer, and it was right before I was supposed to have my 1 month or whatever, and this is all preliminary visitation. It's not the final visitation and whatnot. I get this call from my wife, and she says, you can come up here if you want to, but I'll save you a trip. You're not going to see the kids until we go back to court. Well, I didn't come up there. I dorked around for a month or so, and then I says, I better go up there. If I don't go up there, they're going to use that. He didn't care. He didn't want to see his kids and whatnot. So anyway, unannounced, I went up there when my court papers said I could see my kids, and I went up there, and I was a little bit sneaky in a way because I wanted them to come to the door. If they knew I was there, they probably wouldn't just come to the door or nothing. Well, they wouldn't come to the door, and so I was walking along the front of the house there on the sidewalk, and I see them. I knew they were there. The car was there, the TV was running and whatnot. So I looked through the window there, and there they are, kind of huddled up. And I tap on the window, tap, tap, like this. And she goes furious, sees me there, gets on her cell phone. This is Haleyville, Alabama. This is the birthplace of 911. It was the trial area. She gets on that cell phone, and I see her telephone. And I had to go back down the driveway a little bit because I was on the borderline. I could talk on the cell phone in her house and whatnot. Matter of fact, I'd never even been in this house. But anyway, I went down the driveway about 50 feet, and then it would dial, and then I called the police too because I had some indication that the first one that calls gets the, he's on the police's side. This is her town, buddy. They know her and whatnot, and their father and all this good stuff. Well, the police come over there. There's 3 cop cars come in there, and I go up to him. I says, what the hell did she tell you? I was armed to the hilt. He said, no, they said you were banging the windows out of the house. And I'm still thinking, tapping on the window. So I said, do y'all mind checking the windows and see if there's any handprints on them or anything like that? Anyway, the police tell me, says, you just need to come with us and file out a police report. And so I go with them to the police station and file out my police report. When it's all over with, I said, listen, it's football night tonight. Is there any problem with me going to the game? I might be able to see my kids. And they said, no, we don't see any problem with that. Go ahead. So I leave. Anyway, this comes up later, probably a year later before I even find this out, though. So I go on out to the football game, and I see a few of my relatives on her side of the fence and whatnot, and they look at me and they don't talk to me. They don't say nothing to me. I thought that was kind of strange and whatnot, you know, wouldn't say hi. But by this time, it's in lockdown mode. It's you know, they've circled their wagons, and it's all out for the juggler. But I go on back to home and whatnot, and of course don't see them. A little bit later, well, anyway, we finally go to court, and the divorce is pretty much finalized, but they're telling me to go see this psychological evaluator, which I refused to do. So I appealed to it, but this time I fired my attorney. Another mistake. I fired my attorney because the deal I got, basically I didn't get nothing in 15 years that was accumulated. She walked away with about $250,000 worth of property that I had invested into, rental property in a home that we were, because I would flip homes and whatnot, but this one happened to be in her name with my money all in it. One, trying to get my thoughts together here. The other thing, can we take a break? After the divorce, I go back to the court trying to get a appeal and whatnot, and basically what I'm asking for is to go to a different psychological person for the valuation and whatnot. And I talked to some people and whatnot, and $6,000 is way out of reason. And to me, it was set up, and he wouldn't let me go to anybody else. He denied me going to anybody else. I had to go to this particular woman. And to me, I wasn't going to do it. I'm just not going to do it. So anyway, my wife files another restraining order. The two restraining orders she had before that were written up in the divorce as mute. In other words, they were thrown out. So she files for a third restraining order. And I go up there, and the first two restraining orders, they didn't even put it down there that I was able, you know, you're supposed to, I didn't realize this, but when you have a restraining order, you supposed to have a week to 10 days or something like that say your side of the story. You know, there's two sides of every story. Well, I didn't get that. In the second, on the first one, it just led blank and some code stuff, which basically meant the defendant on his asking that you could have one, and my attorney looks at this stuff, and he doesn't say nothing about it. The second one, it said I could come in there after the 6 months was up. So in other words, it's a year. Here I can go up there and say my side of the story. That to me is illegal too. But my attorney should have picked up on that sort of thing. But anyway, I end up going back up there one time, and I was complaining to the district attorney up there. I said, these Hugheses have too much power. And he tells me, no, they don't. Mr. Hughes got arrested not long ago. And I figured, oh, maybe he had a drink or something and got pulled over DWI or something. Anyway, he says, Mr. Hughes got arrested not long ago. And I didn't think nothing of it, whatnot, because the guy, stopped me when I started telling him this story that they had too much power, and he says, and this is the assistant district attorney, and he tells me, listen, I know your family, I know your children, I know your father-in-law, I know all these people, which is him telling me, disclosing, you know, what he should tell me, that to let me know where it's. And I was real pleased to hear that. I thought he was going to be honest with me and whatnot. So anyway, I go on about my business, and next time I'm up there, I'm going back up there for the third restraining order and whatnot. And before this restraining order, I go in there and I talked. I've done some homework, and then I go in there and talk to the assistant DA, and I ask him, how come you didn't go after my ex-wife for these restraining orders that she's putting out there are all lies? They're getting kicked out of court. And he tells me, well, that's not my job. You got to file a report or something like that that says that. It says on the restraining order, basically, when they fill them out, subject to perjury. Well, perjury evidently is never challenged in Alabama. If they did, half the lawyers would probably be locked up. I don't know. But another thing I asked him about was, what are you doing on my daughter's Facebook page when she's 12 years old? And he says, well, I teach Sunday school at her church, and she was in my Sunday school class. And so I say to him, I says, well, you know what that looks like to me, don't you? It looks like you're a pedophile. And of course he hits the roof and whatnot, and I get on to him. I says, why can't you look me in the eye? Because you know, if you got some of these lawyers or judges, and the judges like that too, they won't look you in the eye. That's sign number one. There's something flaky going on. But anyway, he tells me, he says, listen, you're out of here. And don't you come back here again in my office or I'll get you for trespassing. So I move on down and wait for my turn in court. Well, anyway, when I get time to come in, I'm called in to go to court. But this is how the court works. The only people in there are you and the people that's susceptible of that case. You don't have the general public in there to see what's going on. It's all closed doors and hush, 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 hush. First thing out of the judge's mouth was, I hear you've been running around in my courthouse stirring up trouble. And so I go into it with the judge. I says, Judge, I just went in there and talked to the DA and asked him why he didn't do certain things, that didn't take on my ex-wife for lying on these restraining orders. And I asked him why he was on my child's Facebook page, and I thought he looked like a pedophile. Well, anyway, we go through this scenario, and well, excuse me, I'm really getting this story a little bit mixed up. I'm really up there at this time for child support changes, and the reason I'm up there for child support changes, this was back in January of 2012. My daughter turns 19. Well, she's supposed to be off of my support. I filed for it. It's now November 2012. 10 months later, I still haven't got that squared away. And probably won't, because when I get in those courtrooms, I tell them where I feel. I don't care. You got to tell them the truth. If they can't handle it, tough. So be it. Lock me up. But I'm not going to sit around and let you push me around. I mean, I come from a solid middle-class family that I was brought up to do the right thing. I won 4 state titles. I put myself through college with athletic scholarships, made All-American, went to Vietnam, came back and finished my last year because I dropped out and went to Vietnam. I did the right thing. Suzanne came along. I thought she was a great girl. I liked her. She was fun. We got along great. She was well educated, had good background and whatnot. But she was not the girl for me. But I did the right thing. I married her. Enough said there. I had 2 outstanding girls. She couldn't ask for better girls. But that woman lied to me the first day I met her. I was asking her how old she was. She lied about her age. No big deal, she lied about her age. We're filling out marriage certificate, and what's your birthday? Did it? Well, you told me you were younger than that. Well, little Oman should have gone off. I should have, I should have paid attention. Well, this is what happens down the road when they grew up with a silver spoon in their mouth and they don't get what they think they deserve. Watch out. Because when a woman gets vindictive, or when you're messing around with their kids like the bear, messing around with their kids, they can take your head off. In this case, I'm punished because I defamed her by divorcing her in her Church of Christ background. I tried 3 times to go meet with the preacher at her church, which I knew. 3 times he turned me around. They had circled their wagons and painted me. Somebody's painted me as some heathen and a child abuser or something. That's never come out in court or anything like that. But anyway, they had me on the tape getting mad at my children for 2 minutes. That tape was 24 hours worth of tape, and they take 2 minutes to make a judgment call on me. It's just unconscionable that we live in the USA. I went to war to fight for this country. I have a lot of people that did good things for this state and this country, and I can't even see my kids. Give me a break. There's nothing better in life than your children. And to have people lie and spread my name, and I was brought up a Christian person to do the right thing. And it's nothing that can hurt you more than have your children pulled from you, and that's what you live for, is your children. I'm getting by, thank goodness. Thank God that I have faith. But it's like last time I saw Leah, I told her, it's the last time I saw her, I said to her, Leah, why do you hate me so much? She's clammed up, she's been quiet, she won't say nothing because she's confused. I said, Leah, why do you hate me so much? I love you so much. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. And tough. It's really tough. But she's the kind of person you give your life for. But anyway, in closing, this is what I like to say. There's 2 words that need to be removed. They removed the 10 Commandments. Thank God Judge Moore got back in. I voted for Judge Moore. I talked to him. He stood up for what's right. This country's going down the tubes. But anyway, there's 2 words that need to come out of our legal system. That's just and honorable. The just is gone. You go to court to be just. Take what you want, but be fair about it. Honorable. There's a lot of, get this, this is where I was earlier. That's why I'm down in Montgomery. I buried John C. Tyson, criminal appeals court judge for 20 plus years, married to Bear Bryant's daughter, so he's high profile. And he was on the Supreme Court for a short time. Here I am sitting on the second pew, and I'm sitting with 3 retired Supreme Court justices that are all what they call honorable pallbearers or something like that and whatnot, and talking to them and getting on. Just good people, good people. But the problem with our judicial system is it takes money to get the position. It's money that's dirty money. You've got to pay back. You've got to do something. Some of these judges, some of these lawyers, high-dollar attorneys, believe me, there's money transferring hands. There's money corrupting the system. To take your kids away from me, give me a break. I am about as all-American as you're going to find. And take my kids away from me? Unconscionable. Thank you.